The heavy air in the federal courtroom was palpable, the tension so thick you could feel it in your chest. Elon Musk sat at the defendant's table, his once confident demeanor now tinged with something different. There were no flashy PR stunts, no Twitter bravado, just the man, alone, facing the judgment of the court. Judge Edward Chen, a towering figure known for his piercing intellect and blunt rulings, looked over his glasses at Musk, his eyes narrowing as the lawyer for the SEC continued to outline the charges: securities fraud, market manipulation, and misleading investors. "This is a serious matter, Mr. Musk," Judge Chen stated, his voice as cold as the marble walls of the courtroom. "The consequences of these actions could be severe. You understand that, correct?" Musk nodded, his mind racing. The world was watching, and all eyes were on him. The SEC had brought their case with the usual force of government machinery, and the media was buzzing with anticipation, as if waiting for the inevitable downfall of a tech mogul who had long been seen as untouchable. But Musk had something else in mind, something nobody expected. As the prosecution continued with their damning evidence, Musk's legal team huddled in a whispered frenzy, exchanging notes and strategies. Musk sat there, his face an unreadable mask, but inside he was calculating every move. He knew that the conventional wisdom dictated one of two paths: fight this to the bitter end, risking years of appeals and endless damage to his reputation, or settle, paying a fine and agreeing to terms that could cripple his future leadership. But Musk had never been one to follow conventional wisdom. When the SEC attorney finished, Musk stood up slowly. The courtroom fell into an almost unnatural silence. He raised his hand and addressed the judge, his voice steady, but carrying an undeniable weight. "Your Honor," Musk began, his eyes sweeping across the room, capturing the attention of every person in the courtroom. "I have a proposal." The murmur of disbelief spread across the room. Judge Chen raised an eyebrow, intrigued but skeptical. "Mr. Musk, this is highly irregular. What are you suggesting?" Musk's proposal was as audacious as it was unexpected. He was offering not just a settlement, but a fundamental shift in how such cases were resolved. Instead of continuing with a drawn-out legal battle, Musk was offering immediate compensation on an unprecedented scale. A $2 billion fund dedicated to compensating the affected investors. A transfer of his Tesla stock options, not to the company or shareholders, but directly to Tesla's factory workers. A public acknowledgement of his mistake, without admitting fraud. A move that would keep his future as a leader intact while taking responsibility for his actions. The courtroom was silent. Judge Chen, who had seen hundreds of cases, now found himself at a crossroads. Was this a genius move or a desperate act? He looked at Musk, studying him with a mixture of confusion and curiosity. "Mr. Musk," Judge Chen asked, breaking the silence, "are you saying that you can implement this proposal immediately without board approval or other corporate procedures?" "Yes, Your Honor," Musk replied without hesitation. "The funds will begin transferring by midnight tonight, regardless of what the court decides. I'm not waiting for anyone's approval. This is my commitment to making things right." The SEC attorneys, already fuming at the audacity of Musk's actions, quickly huddled, discussing their next move. The judge, who had been visibly skeptical of Musk's approach, now found himself in an uncomfortable position. Musk wasn't playing by the rules, but he wasn't breaking them either. The court adjourned for a brief recess, and legal experts outside the courtroom were already speculating on the ramifications of Musk's offer. Some saw it as an act of brilliance, others as an attempt to manipulate the legal system to avoid consequences. As the recess continued, Musk sat quietly in his chair, preparing for the next phase. He knew the stakes were high, but he also knew that he had changed the game entirely. The recess was over, and the courtroom filled with anticipation. Legal teams shuffled papers nervously as the clock ticked closer to a decision. Musk's audacious proposal hung in the air like a challenge, one that was impossible to ignore. When Judge Chen entered the room, his expression was more thoughtful than before, though still filled with the weight of the decision he had to make. "Mr. Musk," the judge began, looking over his glasses at the tech mogul, "this is unprecedented. You've proposed a solution that goes far beyond the conventional legal settlements we are accustomed to seeing. How exactly do you plan to manage this? The $2 billion fund, for example. How will it be governed? And how can we verify that the compensation will be distributed fairly?" Musk, without missing a beat, stood up again. This time, his tone was not as confident, but measured. He knew this was the crucial moment. This was his chance to prove that his plan was more than just a headline-grabbing stunt. "I've already assembled a team of independent auditors and financial experts," Musk explained, his voice carrying a sense of authority. "The fund will be managed by a dedicated oversight committee, and we will ensure that the claims process is transparent and rigorous. Every dollar will go to the investors who were harmed, and we'll make sure the verification process is open and above board." The courtroom was quiet as Musk's words sank in. He had done his homework. The judges, once dismissive of his proposal, were now paying attention. They were no longer focused on what he had done wrong. They were focused on what he was doing to make it right. Judge Chen, still processing the enormity of Musk's offer, asked one final question. "And you're certain you can implement all of this without delay, regardless of the legal outcomes?" "Yes, Your Honor," Musk replied. "This isn't conditional. The funds will start transferring tonight, and the stock options will be directed to the employees as promised. It's my personal responsibility, and I'm committing to it." The room was stunned. This wasn't the usual corporate playbook. It was something new. It was something Musk had created on his own terms. The prosecution, now clearly in a defensive posture, could not argue against the sheer scale of Musk's actions. They had been handed a solution that provided immediate compensation, something they had not anticipated in their wildest dreams. For the first time in the trial, Judge Chen looked satisfied. "I believe this court has seen enough," he said, signaling for a recess to give everyone time to review Musk's proposal in more detail. The courtroom cleared out, but the media frenzy outside had already reached a fever pitch. Cameras flashed. Microphones were thrust into the faces of every lawyer, expert, and bystander who could offer an opinion. The world was watching, and Elon Musk had just turned the tables. Reporters scrambled to interview anyone connected to the case, but Musk's audacity had left them speechless. For the first time, they weren't sure whether to praise him or condemn him. Musk, however, wasn't paying attention to the media circus. He was focused on something much bigger, the execution of his plan. He had called in his closest advisors and legal experts, and together they worked around the clock to ensure that everything, from the $2 billion compensation fund to the Tesla stock transfer, would happen on schedule. His legal team was in a state of constant motion. They reviewed every aspect of Musk's plan, making sure that each part of the deal adhered to the letter of the law. There were countless calls with financial regulators, discussions with Tesla's board, and ongoing negotiations with the SEC. By midnight, Musk's proposal had been set in motion. In a high-tech command center that had been set up in one of Tesla's executive offices, a team of engineers, accountants, and legal experts monitored the process as funds were transferred into a holding account for affected investors. On the other side, Tesla employees, who had been promised stock options, were receiving notification of their new holdings. It was unprecedented, and it was happening right before their eyes. Meanwhile, outside the courthouse, the media had not yet stopped spinning the narrative. They were trying to grasp the magnitude of what had just occurred, unsure if it was an act of genius or the desperate grasp of a man trying to avoid the inevitable consequences of his actions. Trevor Noah, the late-night talk show host, was one of the first to address the situation live on his show. His opening monologue was filled with biting commentary, a mix of incredulity and admiration. "The man just walked into a courtroom and said, 'I'll fix everything with my own money,'" Noah quipped, leaning into the camera with a smirk. "How do you even respond to that? That's not a legal defense. That's a supervillain speech." I half expected him to say, "And if I don't get what I want, I'll just buy the court and put up a giant Tesla sign." But the media wasn't just amused. Legal experts, too, were quick to weigh in. Some were skeptical that Musk could follow through with such an ambitious plan. Others wondered if this move would force other corporations to rethink how they handled legal disputes. Was this the start of a new era of corporate responsibility, or would Musk's audacity lead to unforeseen consequences? As the next day dawned, analysts pored over every detail of the transfer. Some praised Musk for taking bold action, while others saw the move as an attempt to manipulate the system. Regardless of the opinion, one thing was clear. This would go down as a pivotal moment in both corporate law and the public's perception of Musk. By the time the court reconvened, the world had already started processing the fallout from Musk's unprecedented move. What had started as a seemingly typical corporate trial was now something much more, a landmark moment that would have implications far beyond the courtroom. Judge Chen took his seat again, the eyes of the nation on him. He glanced down at the papers before him, taking a long pause before addressing the room. "Mr. Musk," he began, his voice steady and calm. "The court has reviewed your proposal, and after much deliberation, we find that it is unprecedented. However, it also offers a resolution that could not only compensate those harmed, but could set a new precedent for how such cases should be handled in the future. We are faced with an extraordinary set of circumstances." The room fell silent. Musk, who had been waiting for this moment, stood and faced the judge with a look of quiet resolve. His legal team exchanged glances, clearly surprised by the tone of the judge's statement. Judge Chen continued, "This court will not pass judgment based solely on precedent. We are in a time where new ideas must be considered, and Mr. Musk has taken a path that aligns with innovation and responsibility. Therefore, the court will approve this settlement, provided all measures are taken to ensure the integrity of the process and that all financial transfers are properly managed." The judge paused before adding, "Additionally, we recommend that Mr. Musk collaborate with external auditors to ensure that the distribution is transparent and fair." The courtroom erupted in a mixture of applause and murmurs. It was a historic decision. Musk had won, not just the case, but the narrative surrounding it. The media, which had been eager to pick apart every word of the trial, now had no choice but to praise Musk's audacity and ingenuity. Analysts speculated that his actions would set a precedent for how tech moguls would navigate future legal battles. Others speculated that this could spark a new era of corporate transparency, where leaders would no longer simply settle with money, but instead take personal responsibility for their company's actions. Musk, ever the visionary, remained focused on what was ahead. In the following weeks, he continued his work at Tesla and SpaceX, but now with an even greater sense of purpose. He wasn't just a business mogul anymore. He had become a symbol of a new kind of corporate leadership, one where individuals took full ownership of their impact, both in the market and in the courts. For the first time, Musk had truly transformed not just the tech world, but the very fabric of how corporate America interacted with its customers, investors, and employees. He had turned a legal battle into a stage for profound social and financial change. As for the SEC, they had lost more than a case. They had lost the narrative. Musk's bold move had not only prevented a potentially damaging outcome for him, but had also reframed the entire discourse around corporate responsibility and leadership in the digital age. The world was watching, and Musk had made it clear that he wasn't going anywhere. Not even the courts could contain his vision.